afternoon to my colleagues. Good afternoon to the people of the territory. Good afternoon to staff. I would like to say a pleasant good afternoon to everyone that is tuned in. I rise in support of these two nominees as it relates to Magistrate Ernest E. Morris Jr. I think it is very important as we continue to make sure that we have individuals in our court system that can assist with ushering decisions on behalf of the people of the territory, not only in a timely manner, but they're fully aware of the laws of this institution. I had an opportunity to look and process when it came to his nomination, and I am in full support of it. As it relates to Harriet Wickrema, nominee for the Virgin Islands Conservation District for the island of St. John, I am also in support of that nomination. So, Mr. Chair, I return the balance of my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator.
And to my colleagues, to the people of the territory, good afternoon to the testifiers. I would like to first speak on Bill 350259. I would like to know in regards to this particular project, funding-wise as well as time frame. This one has to do with Bureau of Corrections and the facility.
The funding is coming from FEMA.
Okay. And what's the estimated time? What's the estimated time do you guys anticipate that this project will take?
The RFP is supposed to be going out on the street shortly before the end of this year for the construction of the new facility.
Okay, and doing the research on project-wise and the size and the scale of this project, you guys have not done any due diligence to anticipate whether it's going to be a 2-year project, a 3-year project. You haven't encompassed that as well?
Yep, it's a 3-year project.
Okay, thank you so much. As it relates to 350281, as you know, we are always in support as it relates to affordable housing in the territory, and we definitely know this is a serious lack of inventory that we've had, especially since we have hundreds of homes in need of repair in the territory. We had an influx of Airbnb that greatly reduced our inventory here in the territory. So for me, this is a no-brainer. I don't have a problem with us making the transition to allow for this to happen. The one question I have is in regards to the 5-year period. Do they have funding for this project, or are they doing it in parts so that they take in revenues and then continue on to utilize those revenues to keep doing the build out? That's what I'm trying to understand, because we need it, so I need to know overall in that 5-year period what all in the different phases it's going to be.
That's an excellent question, Senator. 5 years would be from shovel in the ground to completion. But certainly there will be some sort of phase-in involved. Funding is still being sought. For it to be affordable, certainly the government has to participate. Because if I had to go straight out to a bank or financial institution, affordable goes out of the window. Because if I'm going to finance something, it's going to have to be, payback, and to be able to, fund that loan payment. And certainly, it doesn't, qualify for affordability.
Well, we know over the years many projects have utilized the federal government for grants, et cetera, to assist with the affordable housing aspect of it. And over time, X amount is paid back, and then sometimes it phases out. So I am sure once you go through the pathway of trying to get to affordable housing, I hope it's successful, because that should be the ultimate goal, to assist the people here in the territory. Thank you very much. As it relates to 350308, ever since I've been in this legislature, I've known about this car rental that was owned by the senators. So for me, if you're a long-term business, you've invested into the community, and you just want to continue doing what you need to do. So this is not an issue for me if we're going to continue to support the very businesses that pay taxes to help us to utilize those same monies to service the people we represent. So at the end of the day, I do support all three pieces of these legislation because for economic development as well as progression for the people of this territory. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Senator.
President, pursuant to Rule 509B of the 35th Legislature, I move to Special Order Bill Number 35-0248, a resolution petitioning the United States Congress to amend the Revised Organic Act of the Virgin Islands to authorize the people of the Virgin Islands to elect an Attorney General of the Virgin Islands, to be placed on the session agenda and be placed as an item before the last. I so move.
Motion properly made.
Good evening to the people of this territory, to my colleagues, to central staff, and my staff alike. I rise in support of some, if not all, of the pieces of legislation in this block. We had an opportunity to do the Committee of the Whole, where we discussed in depth several of these pieces of legislation, and they are now placed on the agenda so we can vote on them. We also have several resolutions, 35-0195, honoring and commending Mr. Willard John for his many contributions to the youth and culture of the Virgin Islands, 35-0239, honoring Ms. Claire Lorraine Brown Roker for her dedicated service to the community as well, specifically St. Croix. We also have 35-0242, a resolution honoring and commending Miguel Santos Jr., AKA Poppy Pops. I had the honor of participating in the hearing as these individuals came forward, and we had many in the community really honor them and share with the public all the positive things that they have done to help progress the territory of the Virgin Islands. So I am definitely in support of this as it relates to the leases and zonings. For me, anything that we could do as it relates to economic development and growth, I'm in full support of, and I return the balance of my time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.
Once again, I rise in support of Bill Number 35-0229, an act honoring and commending the 8th elected governor of the Virgin Islands, Kenneth Ezra Mapp. I appreciate the fact when we individually single out people for their accomplishments, and we make note of that. I also would like to rise in support of the Act Number 35-0311 as it relates to making sure that we get some technical support on behalf of WAPA. One of the things that when we went into the state of emergency, I specifically asked of the individuals that were in the task force of Government House if we had reached out to get federal assistance. They never answered that. So apparently we have to deal with it now. As it relates to 35-0312, definitely is going to be supporting this one, as whatever we have to do to assist with fixing the track, to assist with Eudorican track so we could have some track and field situations. Bill Number 35-0301, with us making sure that we include in the code that there will be some type of free forensic medical exams for people that are dealing with violence of a sexual nature, so that they could get some assistance, and for us to be able to get the necessary federal dollars to help with that. I also want to focus on Bill Number 35-0269. I will not be supporting this piece of legislation, and my concern with this piece of legislation is very simple. Back in 2001, this particular article came out. It says, Senator Heiliger proposes a bill to punish and convict testifiers for knowingly lying to the legislature following a Vitima testimony. And during the testimony that was given on this Senate floor that day, several things came about. And because of this, it triggered me to submit legislation to pass a law. That law was passed 2 years ago on July the 20th, and it was Act number 8587. Within that law, it spoke to several things that could or could not be done, and it spoke to individuals willfully and knowingly make or present false, fictitious, fraudulent claims. It spoke to, in Section 2, false, conceal, and covering up tricks, schemes, and devices and material facts. Or it speaks to making use of false bills, receipts, vouchers, accounts, claims, certificates, affidavits, depositions. It continues on, or make any materially false or fraudulent statement or representations, or submit or invite reliance on any forged, altered, or fictitious writings, documents, samples, specimens, maps, and a series of things. And it goes on to say, within the jurisdiction of the executive, legislative, and judicial branches. When those lies were told on the Senate floor that triggered this piece of legislation, when I worked with legal counsel, they assured me that the way this bill was drafted, not only did it encompass the legislature, but I wanted to expand it to the entire government. Because why would you create a law to just say, lying to the legislature, when people could lie to the other branches and create the same havoc? Even when I look back at the video, the intent of this legislation, when I stood on this floor, I clearly spoke to people lying to this body. So this is all documented. I'm concerned that because when I work with legal counsel, the piece, may I wrap up, Mr. Chair? The piece of legislation that is being brought forward, another legal counsel that is here 2 years after the fact shared with us that they believe that is only limited to false claims. They also shared that my concern when it deals with writings, one of the things that I specifically had requested to be put in this legislation, because we're in an electronic age, I also wanted to ask, when I was dealing with the attorney, I asked them, how do I include if people send this stuff electronically? We added a section B that spoke to electronic writings. So I'm concerned where if we're going to have two pieces of legislation that covers the same identical thing written into the code that potentially can be conflicting with each other. Because within this piece of documentation, I speak to 5 years punishment for people lying to institutions and the government. The other thing speaks to 30 days. So I just wanted to say my concerns with that because it will create havoc. Last thing, the public has been reaching out to us in regards to some $200,000. I would like to tell the public, I have no idea what any of you are talking about, because I find it very disingenuous that members of the executive branch is going to the media, making these type of statements, thanking us for stuff I and several of my colleagues know nothing about. So I don't know anything about $200,000. So until I see something, please, I beg the public, do not lay it at the doorstep of the legislature of the Virgin Islands. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Senator Francis Heidegger.
One thing I would like to make note of, the first thing has to do with the unlawfulness of these amendments. Our legal counsel clearly stated on this floor earlier that the fact that we're attempting to amend this title is unlawful. And it would be so simple to bring these things in November after the election, and it would have no problems. In addition, what type of research was done to justify moving from 1,000 to 3,500? Because that's the only thing I would like to be shared, because I was not privy to any previous conversation as it relates to this particular piece of amendment. I reserve the balance of my time.
How much time remains for Senator Francis Heidegger? It was discussed. I was at home in my living room doing this by Zoom. We were right here when the Board of Elections and the election system came here and requested these. These aren't my amendments that I am bringing on my behalf. Additionally, what's the difference in bringing them in November after the election? Everybody have already filed their petition papers already. There's no filing of petition papers now. So we know for sure that this doesn't take effect until 2026 election cycle. I reserve the balance of my time.
How much time remains for Senator Gitter?
I would like to remind my colleague that when he too suffered from his knee injury and he had to stay home on certain occasions, nobody threw any aspersions against him. Now, as it relates to the piece of legislation, we have to be concerned specifically as to how this institution is viewed by the public. At the end of the day, we have a situation where we clearly heard that this is unlawful to do during this period. Our code says no law can be enacted. And we asked for a definition, and we were told that to enact it at this period of time is unlawful. It is that simple.
30
But if we
seconds.
do it after the election, we will fall outside of that 6-month realm, and everything should be resolved. So I am not against, but also I'm going to ask again, what is the justification from going from $1,000 to $3,500 in contribution? I reserve the balance of my time.
How much time remains for Francis Heidegger?
10 seconds.
Thank you. Senator Gitter, 15 seconds.
I'm not even sure how to respond to the senator that just sat there and voted for the first one, even after they stated something, but it's not allowed.
That's not
The
true.
thing is this is not the first bill that would be passed that's not put into effect until a following year. None of these are going to take effect this year. Again, everyone of us in here that's running again have already filed. So there's nothing that's going to affect you in this
30
until
seconds.
2026. I reserve the balance of my time. Oh, and inflation. These guys were here and discussed that. Again, they were the ones that came up with these suggestions, the Board of Elections and the election system. I reserve the balance of my time.
How much time remains for Senator Gittens?
15 seconds.
Thank you. Senator Francis Heidegger, you recognize you got 10 seconds.
I am not sure if my colleague is into reading comics or creating alternate realities. But at the end of the day, when it came to the First Amendment,
Time.
legal counsel did not share with us that it was unlawful. It was in the Second Amendment is when we were told, and from then I have voted no. I reserve the balance of
Your
my
time
time.
have expired.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Gittens, you got 15 seconds.
I'm ready to vote. Thank you, Mr. President.
All time being utilized. Roll call.
Senator Marvin A. Blyden? Senator Blyden, nay. Senator Angel L. Bouquet Jr.?